explosives, leather, and rock music. Sounds like Christmas to me.
That hit the radio December of 95. Number one requested song in America. It was a matter of like 2 or 3 days. Nobody had ever heard anything like that regarding like a Christmas time song or a Christmas song. And it just became number one on everybody's playlist. You know you got a hit on your hands when talk radio's playing your song.
This is CIA, Contagious Influencers of America. I'm David Sands. Today I have Al Pitrelli with me. Now he's the musical director and lead guitarist of the platinum-selling rock band Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Their holiday rock opera has sold something like 10 million albums and has played to something like 100 million fans over the years all across America. Billboard, as a matter of fact, names them as one of the top touring artists of the past decade. Now they're on tour with an all-new show called the Lost Christmas Eve Tour. It's brand new, so head on over to the website. We'll put it right there in the show notes where you can get a little bit of a preview. As a matter of fact, let's take a look at the show, little sneak preview anyway, before I talk to Al. Hey, Al, how you doing?
Good, my friend. Good to see you again. How are you?
Good to see you again, too. I love it. I love that we do this each year now because it's just amazing to keep in touch with you and to see how you reinvent this thing year after year. And I know everybody that goes to the show, they're like, man, I can't wait for next year. So
that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. So
if I don't hear that, that means we did something wrong, and that hasn't occurred in 25 years of touring. So it takes all year long to prepare and figure out how we're going to make the show bigger, better, and just different enough. But, we started, I think, second week of January, plotting this one out, which is what we do pretty much every year. So, people come to the show, it's like, oh my God, it's bigger than last year, it's better than last year. Oh, it's different, surprises, that's important. Because I think we talked about one of our last conversations. I got about 40 or 50% of the audience that I affectionately refer to as the repeat offenders. They're the ones who come back year after year, bringing family, friends, all that. And I want to keep it familiar for them because they haven't adopted us as part of the holiday tradition. But at the same time, I got to keep them surprised. I got to put them back on the heels. I don't ever, like you had said earlier, I don't ever want anybody to walk out of there going, better than last year. Yeah, that would break my heart.
And how do you do that? What goes into the thinking of okay, we've done this now for a quarter of a century, and we know that there are those staple songs that people have got to hear every time, But how do you reinvent this thing? How do you make it so unique that people walk away year after year and go, I can't wait until next time?
It's a year-long conversation. First of all, like you had just said perfectly, we have the songs that if we don't play, we'll get chased out of town.
Right.
So, insert songs, that we're going to do. And then we have 4 stories that Paul O'Neill had written to choose from. So you have the trilogy, the Christmas albums, and you have the film that we had done. So it's Christmas Eve and Other Stories, The Christmas Attic, The Lost Christmas Eve, and The Ghost of Christmas Eve. So right there, it gives us an opportunity to change the story. It's kind of, again, going back to the people that embrace this as part of their new holiday tradition. Like when I was a kid, it would be Charlie Brown or whatever. I would watch year after year after year after year. And I could rotate between Charlie Brown, Miracle on 34th Street, It's a Wonderful Life, whatever it is. So we present the familiar portion of the show to them in story form. Now, the opening of the show and the back half of the show is where we get to have a lot of fun. And like you had said, we have the staple songs that people would love to hear and we love to play. And we have such a big catalog, Paul O'Neill, John Oliva, just so many records, so much material to draw from that we are able to change stuff up We're going to do some songs this year that we haven't done in maybe 15, 20 years. And that's what I mean. I want people to go, oh my God, I haven't heard that since, the early 2000s or whatever. Visually, every year our department has worked all year long to change everything. The look of the show, the presentation, what new surprises do they have in store for us? How does the band and the crew work together to create something nobody else would do? We were all very well trained by Paul O'Neill over, 30 years this coming February when we started recording together, 25 years of touring. So, it's a task, but it's an important task because we owe it to Paul. We owe it to the folks in the audience. And not for nothing, we owe it to ourselves. We want to outdo ourselves every year, and that's the challenge.
Take me back to that time 30 years ago when you and Paul O'Neill started working together. How did that come about?
Paul and I had been friends since probably 1985. And, we'd run into each other in the clubs in the city, studios, events, whatever. And he's like, yeah, one of these days we're going to work together. And I'm like, absolutely, I'd love to, Anyway, you fast forward to winter 95, and he was working on this project, and he had a bunch of guitar players come in, and he wasn't getting what he wanted to hear in his head. He had this beautiful story, and he was trying to create a soundtrack underneath it. And he knew that I had done a lot of film work and a lot of TV commercials, and I, had been touring and recording with all different kinds of artists, serving the song. Okay, wasn't Guitar Hero stuff necessarily. That wasn't as important to me. But so he called me up and said, yeah, I'll be in a minute. Drove into the city. Had my guitar on my shoulder, got in the studio, and he put the faders up. And I looked at him like, when your dog looks at you and goes, dude, what's with the Christmas song? And he goes, told me the story. It's not really a Christmas song. It's a soundtrack depicting events that took place on Christmas Eve during the war in Sarajevo. Okay, gotcha. And that's why I was going to grab a guitar, but he goes, the bomber jets are off in the distance and they're coming in. So we started going, boom, 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 like that little musical motif with the cellist playing God Rest You Merry Gentlemen, but very haunting, And then, pow, the band kicks in. And when we finished it, I looked at him going, this is like one of the most incredible pieces of music I ever heard. And he goes, yeah, I just want to make great art, I'm not that worried about, is it going to sell? Is it anything? If I can concentrate on the art form, make it the best thing that we could make, maybe we'll get lucky later. Here we are. That hit the radio December of 95. Number one requested song in America. It was a matter of 2 or 3 days. Nobody had ever heard anything like that regarding a Christmas time song or a Christmas song. And it just became number one on everybody's playlist. You got a hit on your hands when talk radio's playing your song. That's when, you made some noise.
This got onto various formats. And which song are we talking about?
Christmas Eve, Sarajevo, 1224.
Okay. So this got onto multiple formats. You must have been, you guys must have been just astounded at the reception that you got.
It is names overwhelming. I still can't believe how important this song was almost 30 years ago and how important it's been every year, this year included. It's being new generations of people being introduced to it. They just love that and all the other material that came out after that, It's like having I don't know if we talked about this last time, but it's like having a child, okay? And here you have this little infant. Oh my God, I got to protect it, I got to clean it, I got to bathe it, I got to feed it, I got to nurture it, I got to teach it. And the infant becomes a toddler, and the toddler is just adorable. And the toddler becomes an adolescent, and so on and so forth. Well, this child, if you will, opened its eyes in winter of 95, is approaching 30 years old, and has done things that none of us expected, And just like that, people ask me, you ever get tired of them? I never get tired of kissing my children or telling them that I love them. Well, how could I get tired of this? I was there when his eyes opened up, figuratively speaking, And if Paul's his father, then I'm like the weird uncle. That's how I like to look at things.
So TSO has this very unique sound, this very signature sound. What category would you put it in?
You can't, because it's become its own category, I think. If I had to categorize it, I would categorize it like I would categorize Leonard Bernstein or Rodgers and Hammerstein, soundtrack, John Williams, composers who create soundtracks for stories. Andrew Lloyd Webber would be one, of course. Pete Townsend, when he wrote Tommy for The Who, he and Roger Daltrey. Every song was different. Every song was brought a new character to life in the big picture. So it's really not, a traditional record. It's not really a classical record. It's not really a rock album. It's kind of all of that put together. So if I had to categorize it, I'd say soundtrack, because Paul's stories are the centerpiece of what we do. If he writes a story about some old blues guy in a bar, well, I'm going into my Leon Russell chops or my Dr. John world, If he's writing something very heavy and aggressive, then I'm going to be the guitar player playing heavy and aggressive. If it's something very delicate, I might have an acoustic guitar or a solo piano, It all depends on the story, the portion of the story, and the character of the story.
So how did you get started? How did you pick up your guitar? How did you at what point in life did the light bulb go off and you go, this is what I want to do?
I think it was November 1964. I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. I was 2 years old, in my feety pajamas, because my mother had a Polaroid of me, and they came on. I didn't know what was going on. I was two. But something about that sound that was coming out of my dad's RCA TV, whatever the heck it was, Magnavox, in the 60s. And my granddaddy had an acoustic guitar in the corner. And I remember looking at the Beatles, strumming the guitar with my finger. And just, my mom said, I would just giggle or laugh and get so excited. It just grabbed me by the inner portion of my soul. And that was it. Much to my parents' chagrin, it continued on for the rest of my life.
And what was it like? Well, first of all, what did you were you in a band in school, or were you how did you carry on through high school?
Well, so going through the public school system and growing up on Long Island. By second or third grade, you're either in the football team or you're in the marching band, and I was pretty tidy, so they gave me a trumpet, much safer. And my parents, they knew that, I kept strumming around my granddaddy's guitar, and they started me with private guitar lessons. Steve DeRienzo, I remember the man's name, wonderful, wonderful guy, great teacher. I was like 4 or 5 years old, and, he put up like Mel Bay's music book, and I was like learning the E, F, G, whatever, playing the notes. And I was reading music before I could read the King's English, and so I was continuing on working on the guitar, the way it sounded. And in school here, this is, when you go back and look at history is a very strange thing sometimes. They handed me a trumpet. I was playing in the orchestra, the wind ensemble, the jazz band, the marching band, all these different like large ensembles, and learning how to read music more, being exposed to arranging for large ensemble, being exposed to works by the great composers and all this stuff, and having your awareness of, where does the oboe sit in the ensemble? Where does the timpani drum sit in the ensemble? Well, and think about what on TV or on the radio back then, listening to the score from West Side Story, listening to the score from Sound of Music, Jesus Christ Superstar, any of those great South Pacific, okay? And there was a lot of large ensemble going on. Most of the songs on the radio, the Motown stuff, was a large ensemble. You listen to the Frank Sinatra present large. So I was getting fed all this information at a really important time in my life. That was what ended up in my blood, if you will. That particular sound. Here's Jimi Hendrix. Here's Sammy Davis Jr. Here's Gladys Knight. Here's the Beach Boys. It was 2000 music, good and bad. So as I grew through elementary school, through junior high, through high school, I just continued down that, that path. It was after high school that me and my parents started going at it. Because I'm like, I don't know about college. I want to be a guitar player. And they're like, huh? Never mind. This got me 1979, 1980. And my dad was an educator. He was a college professor and a high school principal. My high school principal, side note. Very, very tense 3 years.
Oh, I'm sure.
But one of the things about my parents...
Did you ever get expelled?
Expelled? No.
Did you ever come close?
Let's just leave it at that. Never got expelled. That wasn't going to happen. Listen, the generation was go to school, go to college, get a good job, get a union job, get married, have a couple kids and a white picket fence. That was the world back then, Wasn't on my horizon. And we went head to head for a while because they were afraid. And then once they stopped being afraid, they said, this kid is spending every waking minute working really hard at something that has no guarantee of any return. And then they looked at it as like, well, let him run with it, And they were very good, and it wasn't like get out of the house at 18, none of that kind of stuff. It was all right. If you're downstairs and you're smoking cigarettes and you're drinking Jack Daniels and you're a lazy bum, we're going to have a problem. But every waking minute, I'd be sitting there practicing, exploring, whether it was on the guitar, whether it was on the piano, listening to Miles Davis, trying to figure out I became like a real nerd for music, And back then, what did you do? There's no internet, there's no social media. So, I drove or took the train 45 minutes into New York City. Said, well, I got to figure this out somehow. And that's how it happened, kind of. And I had a very important person in my life who had recommended me once for a situation. His name is Steve Vai. Incredible human being, wonderful guitar player. He dropped my name in the lap of some artists, probably in the middle 80s. And that was the door opening and allowing me to go in and show the world what I'm capable of doing.
Oh, wow.
So a recommendation is wonderful as long as you're prepared. And he knew that I was pretty well versed in a lot of different styles of music and had a very, very good understanding of a large ensemble. And that's when Alice Cooper hired me to be his musical director, because very theatrical presentation of music, So it wasn't just, being a headbanger all the time, It's ironically, we ended up doing one of the songs from West Side Story in Alice's set. And I was very familiar with the music. So I was like, yeah, I got you on this. And that's really kind of like the impetus of what led Paul O'Neill to say, you know what, man, I need that guy, me, to come in and treat this, again, like I'm helping him create a soundtrack,
And how old were you then?
I got my first real gig with a national touring artist probably in 1985. So would that make me 23, I guess? And yeah, real young, real inexperienced. So, but you learn your lessons. You kind of, go, oh, that was terrible. And then, don't repeat the same mistakes. Just make new ones. And, hopefully one day you run out of mistakes.
What was the first big lesson in that environment, that big time environment that you learned?
Every day there was a good lesson learned, because I was, both grandparents were in the Navy, so very military. And one of the things they told me was, God blessed you with 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you should probably listen twice as much as you talk if you follow the math. And that served me really well. And then the one time I didn't do that, it didn't work out well for me. So the good lessons musically, conducting yourself business-wise, socially, all that stuff, yeah. I made one mistake by speaking before I thought, and that cost me a really big job. And in retrospect, I'm glad, because I never made that mistake again. Young and stupid.
Yeah.
Or young and not smart.
We've all been there, or I can totally relate. So you and Paul worked together, Paul O'Neill, and give us a little background on Paul as well.
Well, similar background, growing up on Long Island. In New York City, as a student of music, if you choose to, and you do your work, you can go to Madison Square Garden. Now, let's go back to the 70s, okay? Madison Square Garden, you can go see Genesis, you can go see The Who, you can go see Pink Floyd, whoever was touring at the time. Big rock shows. Down the block is Radio City Music Hall. Different kind of rock shows and different kind of presentations. All sorts of artists. If you go to the Upper West Side, you got Lincoln Center, where Bernstein and the New York Philharmonic would perform. You had the Beacon. You had the Theater District in Broadway. And this is where Paul went all the time, as did I. So you're being exposed to all these incredible different genres of music at the top of the food chain in every one of these venues. He had a very similar background to me musically, probably even a little deeper than mine, because he was so well-versed in the classics, so well-versed in theater, all the Broadway shows. And he was a headbang from the jump. He loved it when he loved Pink Floyd, you know? So being a student of music and being more concerned with soundtracks and concept records and storytelling, he was a very well-read man as well, you know? Always a book in his hand, always quoting Oscar Wilde, always, you know, just like fascinating human being. He'd write these stories. And in his head, he heard how he wanted the soundtrack to go, and that's where I came in. And as a guitar player, I would say that 60 to 70% of my job has nothing to do with playing the guitar. The majority of what I do is translating what was in that man's big brain and getting it out. So our relationship was etched in stone, not so partly because of my guitar playing, but he had recorded Mozart's 24th Symphony, and he wanted me to play guitar in it. No parts were written for guitar in Mozart's time. No guitarists back then either. So I said, "You got the score?" And he goes, "You can read?" I'm like, "Yeah." So he hands me the score to the symphony, and I open it up, you know, glasses on, you know, real nerd. And he had recorded it in a key that was different than the score is written. So as I'm hunting through oboe parts, cello parts, violin parts, here's the piano part, here's the bass. Okay, I got it. And I'm looking at it, and I start playing it to the wrong key. And he goes, "Oh, is that a problem?" I said, "No, give me a minute." And I sight transposed it. Meaning, so I'm reading in one key, in my head thinking about in a different key to line up with what was previously recorded. And he looked at me and goes, "What are you doing for the rest of your life?" I said, "Hopefully sitting next to you." You know, because that was something that people stopped paying attention to. And again, going back to Steve Vai, he told me back in the day, and this is when I was still like 16, 17 years old, "You play great. Make sure that your rhythm guitar playing is just as important as your soloing, and make sure you can sight read everything they throw in front of you." And now going back to the top of our conversation, I've been reading music since I was a kid. You know, so that just was like, oh, I know how to do this. Not too many other people like look at it that way any longer. They want the immediacy of the playing. Fantastic. You know, some of my favorite guitar heroes of all time, maybe they couldn't read, didn't matter. That part of my ability served me well in this situation, where Paul now knew that we can create stuff and cut to the chase a little quicker because I got a score from it. I'm going to figure it out relatively fast.
So you and Paul worked together at TSO for how long on the tour?
99 was the first year we toured. So, you know, prior to that, we had been recording a lot, sold a lot of records, you know. I think, you know, 8, 9, 10 million records we sold before we hit the road, something like that.
I see all of the accolades there on your wall, so I believe you.
Yeah, that's some of them. Then behind up over here, there's a pile more.
Okay.
And this is like the last corner of the house that I can actually sit down and like have my things because my daughters took over the other 6,500 square feet.
Right.
Yeah. Between Disney and Hello Kitty, I've been overrun, which is a good thing, you know. But, you know, yeah, it's interesting because like a lot of these things occurred before we stepped out onto a stage, I used to joke with Paul, I said, we become like the Steely Dan of Christmas, you know, record all these records and never tour. Okay. And then he goes, somebody dared him in 99 to do a tour. And the last thing you ever do is dare Paul O'Neill because you got to figure it out. And we kind of like, all right, well, we're going to tour. How are we going to pull this off? He's like, got no idea, but let's go do it. I'm like, all right, I love this. Adapt, overcome, improvise, figure it out. Wonderful mantra to go through life with.
And you guys toured for how long together?
25 years now. This will be the 25th year, with the exception of 2020 with COVID, which brought the entire planet to a screeching halt.
I mean with Paul.
Paul was with us until he passed almost 8 years ago.
So at what point did he say, did he officially hand over the baton to you and go for it?
Well, that occurred in 2000. Okay, so again, unprecedented, adapt, overcome, and improvise. 1999, we did 7 cities on the tour in the Northeast. New York, Boston, Philly, Chicago, Detroit, wherever we were. And huge success. Mind you, we're playing theaters, but everyone was sold out. In a matter of minutes, they sold out. It was like, this is fun. And then the following year, he said, well, listen, dude, we got I what I refer to as the original 13 colonies. And then you got a promoter in Seattle, one in San Antonio, one in Phoenix, a couple in Florida, Texas. They all want shows. He goes, we can physically not make it from Boston to San Antonio to Phoenix to Milwaukee. It's not going to happen. He goes, so he said he's going to keep a band up in the Northeast. And he goes, go put a band together, figure it out, and you do the rest of the country. So he handed me the keys to we'll begin our second car.
Okay.
And that's when, you go through like remember the old phone books that everybody you knew, like written down, and like, who sings, who plays the drums? Oh, and you put a band together. Right. Find them. Okay. Musicians, that's how you keep your friends employed. Be a musician. Like, I knew a couple singers here. I remember I worked with this bass player years ago, and we put a band together. And then, 2 bands are now touring, like Soul Love of God's Creation. And then I think, I'm going to say it was 2005, I think. And he called me up. He goes, hey, dude, you're sold out in Salt Lake City tomorrow night. I'm like, awesome. He goes, you want to do another show? I'm like, well, I got to be in Denver after. He goes, no. Same day. And I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, we're going to put tickets on sale for a matinee show. You want me to play a rock and roll show at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Okay. So everybody gets up a little bit earlier, extra coffee. And so we went from 1 band to 2 bands to 2 bands playing 2 shows a day over the course of 25 years. 99, I had 1 box truck. Last year I had, 20, 21 tractor trailers and 12 buses. Remember I told you about this child grew up and exceeded everybody's expectations and continues to grow and surprise us every year.
You've painted a picture here over your career and so incredibly colorful, so incredibly impactful, and I just think of all the kids who are developing their talents, their career today in the music industry, and they just don't have the opportunity to go deep like you did. Figuring out the whole road scheme, figuring out theaters versus arena, just all this stuff that back 20, 30 years ago. Now it's, hey, I've got an iPhone. I can create everything I need, and I can edit everything I need, and I can put it out to the world without anybody really listening to it and telling me, hey, you could improve here or there. And of course, we all know that, everybody can have a perfect voice now. You miss out on so much that you experienced over those years. Yeah.
Well, yes, I agree with you. And I don't know if it's any different than, my generation. So my dad grew up listening to the radio, right? 1930s, early 40s, no TVs. And then, TV came out. Let's call that our first glimpse of what was to become social media. Like, we can watch TV. Well, that's going to ruin you. The boob tube, I remember it was referred to, Well, I learned a lot watching Jacques Cousteau and watching South Pacific on the boob tube. Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, So there is a positive side to the amount of information that you can receive. But I wasn't reliant on the television. I could watch, Leonard Bernstein televised The Unanswered Question, which was 6 lectures from Harvard. I was like, wow, I wouldn't have been able to do that prior to, that TV being in my living room. Watching the Beatles on TV launched this whole mess of mine, if you will. So, my 3 older boys who are in their middle to late 30s now, were kind of at the front of the computer revolution, they utilized that for whatever. There was some problems with it, but they all have wonderful careers and they're married and all that stuff. Terrific. My 2 young daughters, who are 8 and 13, are teaching me things that I would not have been aware of, because you really do, looking at it, the glass half full with the social media in the world. There's a lot of information that they can now attain on their phone that maybe they wouldn't, it's globally, we've become this big, okay? So is there a lot of bad stuff on it that negates the old-fashioned going to New York City and walking the streets? Yeah, but there's different ways to achieve a similar outcome. The fact that people could have a studio in their home and record is a wonderful thing. The fact that there's auto-tune, not so good, because I remember I having to save money to do a demo, and it was so expensive you could hardly do it. Now, like you said, I could have a recording studio on my phone if I wanted. So I don't know. I go both ways with it. When it's annoying me, when the kids are spending too much time on TikTok, when it's an annoyance, But do they have access to things like, I can check my daughter's school grades every day because of the internet. This is awesome. You can't get away with nothing no more. I know what you got on your test before you told me what you got on your test. It depends. But I do agree with you. I don't think that in regards to being a guitar player, I don't know if it's the internet or how somehow everybody's become, they want the immediacy of something. They want to download it. Hey, you ain't downloading this. You're not going to do it. You're going to have to sit down for hours on end, and hopefully you love it and enjoy to be able to do this with no guarantee of anything in your future. That's the thing with being a real artist. The starving artist mentality. I did this for decades. You didn't think about money. I just liked the way it sounded. I could play a Neil Young song on my guitar and everybody would go, yeah, awesome. That's cool. Then do you think about how much money I'm going to make? No, man, I just want to be good. I want to be better than, if I'm listening to Jimmy Page, which I'll never be better than Jimmy Page, but I want to be able to play Stairway to Heaven just like him. You're not paying me to do that. I just love it and I want to accomplish that, Sugar Ray Leonard said something really interesting a long time ago in an interview. He said, champions are not born in Bel Air. And that's kind of went, wow. And Mike Tyson said that discipline is doing something you hate, doing it like you love it. Now, I don't hate playing the guitar, but I'm very disciplined, and I know that to this day, at 62 years old, I got to sit with that thing on my lap for a couple hours every day, for a couple months before we actually get to rehearsal. I play all year long, I play the piano all year long, but I have a very disciplined routine that I need to do all the time, And that's the thing that maybe some of the younger generation, because they can download Spotify, whatever they do, I don't even know any of this stuff, they may not want to spend 5-6 hours a day doing something. They want it now. That ain't going to work for you.
So let's talk about this year's show. Sure. Tell me about the theme of the show, how uniquely different it is from years past, and the work that has gone into it.
Well, this year's show is called The Lost Christmas Eve, which was the third installment in Paul O'Neill's Christmas trilogy. Okay. One of my favorite stories, and again, going back to what we call the repeat offenders, one of their favorite stories. And the two themes or the two messages that I walk away from with the story is, one is the obvious one, is that it's never too late. Insert whatever definition you want of that sentence is, it's never too late. Never too late to make a change, never too late to, for some sort of self-improvement. In the case of the story, never too late to reach out to someone that you love that you haven't seen in the entirety of your life. It's never too late, And there's an old saying that the two best times to plant a tree are 40 years ago and today, Doesn't matter. Just do the task at hand. The more subtle one that I walk away with is I was sitting down with the acoustic guitar as we were recording that record, and I started playing this pretty little series of chords, and Paul started just humming this melody, and the melody became lyric. I was like, that's gorgeous. And he ended up writing what was called Child with Different Wings, which is kind of the summation at the end of the record about the child in the story who was completely different. And I kind of, over the years, realized that, that's a beautiful sentiment because we're usually afraid of differences. You see something different, and maybe if you take a second and find the beauty in those differences, then that could, be all-encompassing to any difference you have. Not all, but, this child who's not the quote-unquote, I hate to use the word normal or stereotypical, whatever. Whatever the father in the story's definition of what his child should be, the child was not that. And instead of embracing the differences, he left the kid in some hospital and just walked away for 30 years. And when he finally went back to see that the child's differences made such a positive impact in society, he realized, I should have looked at the differences this way when the kid was a baby, And being a father of 5, I have 5 beautiful children. Every one of them is different to each other. And they all have their little eccentricities and quirks and their personalities. And, and some of the things that come out of my daughter's mouth, my 8-year-old Layla, I just, look, she came home from school a week or 2 ago, whatever it was, and she ran in the house and she got a yoga mat on. She pulled out a yoga mat and put on her sports top and her leggings, and she comes downstairs 20 minutes later. She goes, Daddy, I've been working out for 20 minutes and I haven't lost any weight. What are you talking about? You're like 11 and a half pounds. So well, one of the kids in school called me fat. In 3rd grade? So kids have it hard enough. When, in my house, my children are perfect, So imagine like some sort of thing that makes them a lot more different than the other kids, and getting bullied and getting picked on and all. That's, being a dad and being a Sicilian dad, that's what I kind of honed in on the message of this story, saying, give different a chance for a minute and find something special, find something beautiful. Forrest Gump, if you had to come up with, a movie or a tale of that, there it is,
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Oh, absolutely. In regards to legacy, I want to talk about that a minute. I want to talk about, first of all, let's talk about professional legacy.
Uh-huh.
Of all those gold and platinum records on your wall there, which one really stands out? Which one is the most meaningful to you?
I had no way to ever answer that one. Well, I'm going to turn my phone around for 1 second, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Hang on, what? Can I do that on here? I don't know how to do that. No, I'm just going to turn around.
There you go.
In the middle, one of those says it's Alice Cooper. That was my first one, 1989.
Really? Wow.
So, is it the most important one? No, every one of them has a story. Obviously, the first TSO gold record, and then platinum record, then multi-platinum record, absolutely. But this would be my first, which was my first time. And, growing up, dreaming of gold and platinum records and having one that with my name on it that I earned, I did it. First milestone regarding that. And then you got to be careful because then it almost becomes a drug. I need another one. I need more. And I took, my wife and I took the kids to Graceland this summer. And, my daughters all down here and they look at the gold and platinum. It's cool. And then we got to Elvis's house and he's sold 1 billion records as of this year. And he must have had 1,000 in one room, just gold and platinum. And my daughters looked at me and they're like, Daddy, you're kind of a loser compared to him. Yes, ma'am. So the first one was the first one, and that kind of set me down. And it was like, I have to work hard to continue on and do this. And as you can see, I've been very, very fortunate. These are just taps on the shoulder saying that a lot of people enjoy your work and or whatever portion of a contribution I've had with these things, I'm very proud of it, but that ain't my legacy.
Let's talk about your personal legacy now. What how would you like to be remembered?
I don't know. First of all, I'd like to be remembered. Let's start with that.
Let's start with that. Yeah.
Let's start with the obvious. I would like, and I'm probably never going to meet my great grandkids. I'm having my first grandchild this coming December.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Anyway, whatever generation, I would like to live forever in their hearts because they celebrate my music and they celebrate the stories of Daddy or Grandpa, what he was like, what he did, And going back, they're not going to remember stuff. Who knows where any of this stuff will be, when I'm long gone. But whatever I was as a man, as a father, as a husband, as a friend, things that I did, kids don't remember the material things. They remember, letting them paint my toenails purple or like the memories that they're going to have, you know what I mean? Or, like all the things that people overlook because life kicks in and society tells us we have to work, we have to have money, you have to have 3 Mercedes in your drug. That's all nonsense. I mean, it is what it is. Their memories of me, I want to be happy, loving, caring. I want them to tell their children, like, the old dude on the wall with the long hair, he was something else. He was a lot of fun. He was pretty special on occasion, And I want them to understand this, that it's okay to miss somebody. You kind of have no choice in the matter. But if you were given the choice of missing someone or not, well, I would prefer missing them over never having them in my life, whether physically in the same room or maybe spiritually or, whatever is in your heart of remembrance. I just want my legacy to be a solid B+. Always shooting for an A, But somebody told me once their definition of hell would be when you die, you meet the person you could have been. Very, very powerful state, and I'm pretty positive that won't happen with me. I think, like I said, I give myself a solid B+, and I'm pretty content with that. And I think being content with your life and your accomplishments is one of those blessings that you kind of hang on to and go, yeah, all right, I did okay.
Wow. That's been very profound. I appreciate that. Well, you know what, Al, it's always great catching up with you. It's always a lot of fun.
Always, my friend. Always.
Yeah. And I wish you much success this year with the tour, and hope to see it. And I just want to tell you, thank you for putting out the love, the encouragement, the joy that people take away from this every year. And thanks for keeping the music alive. Also, thanks to our radio friends for keeping the music alive. We so appreciate our affiliates, and just want to tell you that just keep on, and keep the faith, my friend.
Let me add one more thing. Do we have 2 more minutes?
Yeah, we got 3.
Okay, good. So one of the things I did want to share with you, and you kind of touched upon this briefly, and then we got sidetracked. But, gold round, all the accolades, all the fun stuff, great. One of the things that I have noticed is that what I'm seeing generationally now, people coming out, okay, 3 generations deep to the shows. And I've heard it so many times, 1,000 times over the last bunch of years, that, hey, by the way, I brought my 4-year-old daughter last year. And, obviously they're coming back to the next year's concert. And because of you guys, she started taking violin lessons or guitar lessons or piano lessons. And that's something that, people say about success and all that. The greatest reward I've ever been given is knowing that somehow one of us on stage or all of us in the entirety of the organization, the band, influenced the child to look at the arts. Could be dancing, could be singing, could be whatever it is. And it happened to me personally where a 10-year-old kid asked me for my autograph, and he goes, one day I want to be in your band, dude. I'm a guitar player, and I'm going to practice, and I'll be. And 13, 14 years later, he's auditioning for us. That's something I love talking about, because the impact of Paul O'Neill's work goes far beyond a rock band in an arena or a bunch of old records. Remember what I said? That kid, we talked, I gave him my email address, hey, keep me posted, dude, whatever. And he sent me videos, and I talked to him, and, so that's one who used the internet in a positive manner to be communicative with me and show me his progress. And here you are. And now he's going to have a life. He's got a life as a musician anyway, but maybe we'll be on stage together one day, That's a cool story.
You could almost start a TSO school online with these kids. That would be kind of interesting.
Yeah, it would be. I've always been an educator, and I come from a family of educators, and Paul O'Neill loved teaching. He wanted to share the knowledge of the mathematics and everything in music. He always wanted to do that. He was always very generous, especially when it came to institutions of higher learning. Listen, who knows? Maybe that B+ mine will turn into an A. Who knows? We'll see. Maybe we'll be there.
I seriously, that would be a very, very cool idea. We've always seen these. When was it, during the pandemic, where people were doing these choirs online, and you'd see like hundreds of people performing online. which was very cool. You could almost do it. You could almost do a student version of TSO and create that. Well, that would be pretty wild. And then maybe award somebody they get to actually play with you on the road. Maybe that's the grand prize. Somebody makes the band.
This is a good idea. We should talk about this more.
Yeah, and that would be something to also promote on the radio. That would be pretty cool as a year-long thing to get people in the gate. That would be kind of fun.
That would be.
Look, it's been great catching up with you. You know that, and we know we love you. And thanks for taking so much time today.
My pleasure, brother. I enjoy our time together. I look forward to seeing you next time. Much love and respect to you and your family, and have a great holiday.
Thanks again, Al. I love getting to talk to you each and every holiday season. Again, head on over to TSOtickets.com to see when and where they are coming to your area or a city near you. This is such a great show. I've seen it, and I know you're going to want to see it. And take the whole family. This is a family show. This has been CIA, Contagious Influencers of America. From the producers of Keep the Faith, please do check out our websites. The Keep the Faith website is at KeepTheFaith.com. Pretty easy to remember. And of course, our website for our Contagious Influencers, the podcast website, is ContagiousInfluencers.com. Until next time, go out there and live that life in living color, because it sure is a heck of a lot more interesting than living it in black and white. See you next time.